Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and it's unboxing time. This is an exciting one. All unboxings are exciting, but this is an expensive one. So I finished my review last week on my Monroe custom sigil, and I loved that knife, but it wasn't permanent keeper status, and so I had planned on selling it. I'd listed it a couple of times, really just for what I had in it. And the market just wasn't quite as hot as I guess I thought it was. Sometimes that happens, but I listed it in a couple of places. I wasn't too aggressive with it, and then ultimately I just wasn't getting any meaningful bites. And so then I opened it up to potential trades, but said I was picky, and it is what it is. I put it that I was willing to sell or trade, and I'd be willing to hear offers, and then started getting some messages. It tends to be much easier, in my experience, to trade a knife than to sell it sometimes. And I turned one or two down just because they weren't my style. At that range of knives, frankly, you see a lot of Damascus, and I don't like Damascus. So I got some interesting trade offers of knives that would be really cool, but they're in fancy Damasteel and stuff that I'm just not personally that into. So I turned a couple down, and then I got a message from a dude who was in Singapore, which I'm not usually all that keen on trading knives or selling knives out of country just because it's more difficult dealing with shipping and all of that. Anyway, it ended up working out really, really well because this guy, I guess, has a buddy who works with or closely with, I don't know, for DHL, and was able to, not only he was willing to cover shipping both directions, but like sent me the label to just put on the box, and then had the DHL guy come pick it up straight from me. It was all like the easiest thing possible, and it only took, I think, 4 days for the knife to get here. That was on, I want to say that was Friday that we did that, maybe Thursday, but today's Monday and it arrived. So, and his got there on his end as well today. So crazy that it was that quick. I don't know what kind of magic he worked with DHL, but it's done. So I traded the sigil for a Holt, and I have a Holt haptic, so I grabbed it for the unboxing. This is actually my second Holt haptic. This one I got in their kind of lotto. I got a spot not long ago, and it's the bent starburst pattern M390 blade, and I love this haptic. This makes me very happy. I like it more than my first haptic because it's really plain, and I'm a plain kind of guy. It matches my wall back here, which this is going to be changing soon, by the way. There's going to be new wallpaper here instead of these because they keep falling off. Anywho, all right, so part of why I jumped on this Spectre, which is the other model that Holt makes, I'm going to start cutting into this while I go, was because, so when the Spectre was the only knife that Holt made, which it was that way for quite some time, I really wasn't that into the Spectre. Just aesthetically, the looks don't really get me all that excited. This is really taped up in here. I'm gonna have to do some surgery. But yeah, I've never been drawn to the looks of the Spectre. And then when the Holt came out, I was like, the haptic came out, I was like, that actually looks good. That I want. So I got my first haptic. They hadn't been out for all that long. The haptic is still a relatively new model, I would say. And then now I'm on my second haptic, and I like these knives, but they've kind of been, I don't know, they've made the Spectre seem more alluring to me because of how much I like the haptic. It's just, honestly, I think kind of as good as a flipper-only knife can get. I'm not usually huge on knives that are only flipper tab for deployment. They tend to get kind of boring to me, but the haptic just kind of doesn't because it's freaking fantastic. See, I need to make one more cut on here. So yeah, because I've loved the haptic, I've thought it would be fun to get a Spectre, but the market's crazy on Spectres because they don't make them anymore, especially. They go for a freaking lot of money. So how am I supposed to, oh, I cut the wrong side of that flap. Dang it. I'm an idiot. Yeah, so if you remember, my sigil, I was in for $15.50, plus I ended up paying some extra on shipping and stuff, and so I was in that knife ultimately really for like $1,600, something like that, and I didn't quite straight trade. I got a little bit of cash on top, and the other guy covered shipping like I talked about, so call it whatever you want, but this is a very close in terms of trade value as what I had in the sigil, and they didn't table for that much. They've certainly gone up, but it is what it is. That's what the market is on Spectres right now. I've kind of been looking for a little bit, so it's nice that I was able to get one, but it costs what it costs. We'll see if I end up keeping it long term. Only time will tell. I already know that I love the haptic, so it's going to be interesting. I'll have to at least love it as much to keep both, but I might have to kind of pick which one is my favorite now that I've got both. And I have handled a Spectre before, I should say, probably a couple of times actually. I want to say I handled one at California Custom Knife Show that a dude just happened to have and let me handle, and then when I was in Portland, gosh, that's like 8 months ago now, and I met up with my buddy Thomas Moore. He had his haptic on him when we met up to grab food. Then we ended up going back to his house, so I saw a lot more of his knives, but played with his, not his haptic. That's going to happen a lot. His Spectre. I played with his Spectre there. His Holt Specter. This is the haptic. All right, so this is like the wrapping paper that it came in, just fold it up. Then we have the Holt Blade Works box. When I unboxed this haptic, I had forgotten. When I purchased mine, they were out of boxes, and so it was a little bit cheaper because they were out of boxes, but I actually don't have a box for the haptic right now, so this is the only Holt Blade Works box that I have at the moment. I do have my Holt Blade Works shirt now. I like the haptic enough that I got one of their shirts. The way that their like authenticity cards work basically is it's actually these little cards you tap your phone on and it brings it up virtually, which is cool. It's got a little thank you written on there. Looks like that says A.H. Angie Holt, I assume that is. All right, so little cards and stuff. And let's see. Oh yeah. So this spec is really, really close to the same exact spec that I have on the haptic. It is also bent starburst milling pattern, and it has the same pivot hardware. And they're both, I think they call burnished in the nude for the backspacer and the clips, although this one's not like a milled pattern like this one is, but these knives are kind of not twins, they're siblings. Now another thing interesting about this Spectre, so this is a V4, it's one of the liner lock ones, which I would prefer. I think liner locks are especially fun on knives like this where you don't have to worry about where you're placing your fingers. That was it for the box, by the way. I'm going to set this aside. Perfectly centered, everything looks good. This knife is in really good condition, but something that's interesting about it is the blade finish, I guess, is a little bit rare. I forget what it says on the authenticity card. I want to say it's burnished on the blade finish too, which is kind of like a blasted finish, and I feel like most Spectres you see have a higher shine blade. This is probably a pretty great user finish. Not that I'm confident I'm going to be treating this $1,500+ Holt as a total like bruiser of a user, but it's nice. I'm sure I will do some cutting with it. Yeah, this feels better than, I don't know, maybe it's because I have more experience with owning a Holt now and it reminds me so much of the haptic, but I don't remember liking it as much as I am just right now putting it in my hand. The size difference between the Spectre and the haptic isn't as crazy as I thought it was on paper now that I've got them both sitting right here. I remembered the Spectre being bigger than this. Maybe I'm crazy, but they're really not that different. Obviously you've got less blade length here, but handle especially, there's not a big gap between the two. Both are in M390, both obviously titanium with liner locks, a lot of internal milling on both of them respectively. This is kind of fun that they're like twin builds in terms of spec, because this is, I don't know, like if I'd been offered a number of Holt Specters as trade for that sigil, I would have turned them down because I didn't want another like vibrant anodized, like mirror polished, anything that I was going to be worried about scuffing up or anything like that. And this one is just my speed for a knife like this. This feels so good. Yeah, I don't find this knife to be exciting aesthetically. I think the haptic is the cooler looking one, just for my preferences. I dig it. I like this blade shape better. I think it's just a little bit more eye-catching, but the Spectre is a phenomenally functional profile. And this milling pattern does look really good. I like the bent starburst a lot. I hadn't even been aware that they did this milling pattern on the Spectre. I didn't pay much attention to Holt when they were just doing the Spectre, but I feel like I haven't seen as many in this milling pattern. Maybe that's just me, but once I got the haptic in it, and then it was like to have the Spectre in the same milling pattern was really exciting. So yeah, anyway, it's out of the box. It's perfectly centered. The action is freaking phenomenal. It's as drop shutty as knives get. Let's see if I can get my finger out of the way. It'll drop all the way. It's just crazy. Makes fun sounds. Yeah, they're brothers, these knives. Siblings, to say the least. Look at these. Let me see if I can not make it super shadowy. Get our thumbnail here. Look at that. Yeah, that is a sweet looking blade, in my opinion, or knife, I should say. The blade, ironically, is what I find probably least aesthetically appealing about the Spectre, but again, very functional. Yeah, it's thin too. Nice cutting geometry, full flat grind. Anyway, all right, they're out of the box. It's out of the box. I now have 2 Holts. I have one of each of their models in kind of the spec that I want most, so we'll see if it lasts and becomes a forever knife. I don't know if it will, because it's so costly and I have the haptic already, but we'll see. Time will tell. I'm glad I have one at the moment. So thanks for checking it out, guys. We'll see you on the next one.